You are listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I am your host, Ali Essig. Why does cancer always take the best ones? Why does cancer always seem so unfair? It's like I feel like people who have everything going for them, who have an amazing future, it's stolen from cancer. Last week, I found out that one of the women that I look up to, a woman that I worked for, Congresswoman Mia Love, passed away from brain cancer. Now, I was Congresswoman Mia Love's press secretary during both her campaigns, and I learned a lot from her. She actually lost her first political campaign, and it was amazing to see her regain strength. It was amazing to see how that loss made her be better. She could have chosen to be bitter, but she became even better. And when she ran again, when she had her second political campaign, she was a better candidate. She was a stronger woman. And I learned so much about resilience. I learned so much about how she had this desire in her heart. She knew that this was part of her life path, was to be the first Black Republican Congresswoman ever to be elected to the United States Congress. But she was more than that. She was an incredible mom, and she balanced all of her responsibilities. First of all, just running a political campaign is so stressful. There's so much going on. And she would often cancel her interviews with the press so that she could spend more time with her family. She was an incredible mom, a wonderful wife, and a leader. She knew what was most important, and that was her family and making sure that they were all set. But I was grateful to be behind the scenes and not in front of the camera until I got a similar call. And that call for me was to teach the word of wisdom, to help people transition to eating more plants, to show how we can experience so many benefits when we follow the word of wisdom completely and not just pick and choose the parts of it that we like. If we can really eat meat more sparingly and eat more plant foods, we can experience so many benefits. And one of those benefits is minimizing your risk of cancer. Now, I know that this is a touchy subject because truthfully, not all cancers can be affected by diet or even lifestyle. Some people get cancer and there's literally nothing you could do. But it is estimated anywhere between 50 to 70% of cancers can be minimized with diet and lifestyle changes. And not just once they're diagnosed with cancer. In fact, sometimes that's too late. It matters most before you even know the cancer is growing inside you. But to understand that, let me tell you about the 4 stages of cancer. The first stage of cancer is tumor initiation. And that is when we are exposed to a carcinogenic substance. It could be a chemical carcinogen, it could be a virus, it could be radiation from the sun, or it could be other group 1 carcinogens that are well known, like alcohol and processed meats. Yes, alcohol and processed meats are categorized by the World Health Organization as a group 1 carcinogen. Yet how many of us are feeding hot dogs to our kids, bacon to our spouses, having ham for Easter dinner? These are group 1 carcinogens, and they can initiate cancer. It can start the process. The good news is your body is pretty darn amazing, and it attempts to detoxify any type of carcinogen that it finds as soon as possible. It's like, nope, we don't want that carcinogenic substance in our body, and we'll try and get rid of it. But the problem is, if you're trying and trying, sometimes things actually slip past you. It's like you're playing a game of ping pong and there's only so many balls that you can hit at once. And if you are constantly exposing yourself to these carcinogens, then more likely a couple of them will pass through and cancer will be initiated. And once it's initiated, it rarely, if ever, reverses. And then we move on to stage 2. Stage 2 of cancer is the formation stage, is the promotion stage. It's when it starts to grow. Now, just because you've had cancer initiated within you, it doesn't mean that it's ever even going to turn into cancer. In fact, most of us have cancer growing within us right now. In fact, all of us do. We just can't really avoid it by living in the world that we live in today. But it's in this stage, in stage 2, where your diet and lifestyle plays a huge role. This is where cancer starts to grow. And it begins after these precancerous cells are initiated, they're mutated, and then they're replicated. Okay. Precancerous cells are prompted to grow and survive. Now, this can take years, it can take months, it can take decades. And this is key. While tumor initiation is not reversible, this stage is reversible. In fact, you can pretty much turn cancer on and off and on and off in this stage, depending on what you decide to eat, how you decide to live, how stressful is your life, are you exercising? All of these things play a huge role in the formation stage. Nutrition, genes, and stress come into play significantly here. This is something else I want you to understand, and that is that too much protein, too much dairy, and even too much sugar can encourage cancer cell growth. And I'll tell you why exactly later on. But this is why what you eat matters. And it's not just the sugar, it's also having a diet high in protein. It's having a diet high in dairy. Making sure that we're eating meat sparingly, that we're eating more plant foods is so important at this phase. The next stage of cancer is tumor progression. And this is when cancer is usually discovered. Now, you probably have heard of someone who was diagnosed with cancer and they decided to eat a plant-based diet and it didn't work for them. They ended up passing away. And then you probably heard of someone else who was diagnosed with cancer and then they ended up eating a plant-based diet and it worked. In fact, they were able to completely reverse cancer. And that is because depending on the cancer, it may be too late. Diet alone may not be enough. It has grown so big and it's gone so far that you may not be able to reverse it. Now, it's never, ever too late. And it is also why at this stage, some people do really well on keto and some people follow a completely no sugar diet. And that's because, again, for some people, their cancer, maybe sugar was the big thing that helped it grow. And for other people, it's usually more than that. There's multi-factors that encourage cancer to grow. So sometimes when you take those out, that's where you can see a reverse of that cancer. And sometimes it doesn't work. Now, tumors tend to stay at their primary site and remain benign, but cells that are cancerous become relatively independent. They become aggressive and resistant to their destruction. And that is why sometimes at this stage, it's gone so far. It's so resistant to destruction. And then the next stage of progression is when it metastasizes. And that's when the cancer cells move to other tissues. And again, it's so much harder at this stage to reverse it. It's way easier if we can stop cancer from growing in the first place in stage 2, right? Before it gets so far in that formation stage. Now, a key hallmark of cancer, and a really important hallmark of cancer, is what's called angiogenesis. And angiogenesis is the formation of new blood vessels. Now, this is a key component of the circulatory system, and it's a key component of cancer growth. Just like anything else growing in your body, it needs nutrients to thrive and survive. And so cancer tells your blood vessels to grow these blood vessels around it so that it can get the nutrients it needs to thrive and survive. There have been a lot of drugs on the market called anti-angiogenesis drugs that are used to prevent or slow the growth of cancer by starving it of its needed blood supply. But here's the cool thing. Research is showing that many plant-based foods act in a very similar manner as these drugs in starving off the blood supply to cancer. This is why eating a variety of plants is so important, because it's a variety of plant-based foods. It's not just one food. You have to be eating a variety of plant-based foods in order to experience those anti-angiogenesis effects. And it's one of the reasons why a plant-based diet is so beneficial in minimizing your risk of cancer. Now, another hallmark of cancer is your telomere length. What are telomeres? At the end of your chromosomes are your telomeres. And just like your shoelaces and how your shoelaces have caps at the end, when those caps get smaller and smaller, the shoelaces tend to come undone. And just like that, your DNA tends to come undone and your life tends to end. And so telomeres are key in controlling aging. It's key in knowing how long you have to live. And Dr. Dean Ornish found that after 3 months, just 3 months on a plant-based diet, that telomerase, which is the enzyme that repairs and lengthens telomeres, increased by 30% in patients, while they decreased in the control group. Everyone in his study had prostate cancer. And so this was huge. The fact that a plant-based diet can actually increase the length of your telomeres. Telomere length was positively associated with eating more legumes, with nuts, seaweed, fruits, and vegetables. And it is inversely associated with alcohol, with red, and processed meat. Now, I know we don't really think about it when on Easter Sunday we serve ham, but that's a processed meat. And we don't really think about it when we're on vacation and we have bacon for breakfast, but that's a processed meat. And a lot of times red meat was just part of the rotation. We go to chicken and then beef and then pork, but pork and beef, those are also red meats. And they are a group 2A carcinogen. They are associated with a shorter telomere length. And so while yes, you can have these occasionally or sparingly. In fact, Dr. Michael Greger, I was at a recent conference and he was showing us all of the data on eating meat versus eating plant-based foods. And it was fascinating. You know what he said? And he kind of said this to the side. And I was the only one that was like, what? Did you hear what he said? Oh my gosh, did you hear what he said? He said that it takes about 5 servings of meat in a month before you start to see the negative effects the animal meat has on your health. To me, that was a testament of eating meat sparingly. Once a week, that's occasionally. 5 times a month, that's occasionally. And you won't see these negative effects, but it's when you're consuming it more day in and day out that you start to see these type of effects on your health. Now, of course, it goes beyond just eating more plants and eating less meat. Overall, there are so many factors that influence cancer. There's a lot when it comes to lifestyle. There's a lot when it comes to even just your body fat percentage. The higher body fat percentage you have, the more likely you are to get certain cancers. For example, you have an increased risk of multiple cancers like kidney cancer, colorectal cancer, esophageal cancer, pancreatic and liver cancer, and breast cancer. Body fatness can trigger alterations to your hormones and so many other aspects. So that's just one thing. Physical activity is another. There's strong evidence that being physically active can have a positive effect on reducing the risk of multiple cancers. That's why your favorite health guru who's eating a ton of protein every day, who's eating so much meat, but who's working out every day, may never get cancer, even if they're eating smoked meat that is carcinogenic, even if they're eating as much bacon as they want, they may get cancer, they may not, because lifestyle also plays a role and exercising does matter. And then alcohol. We cannot not talk about alcohol. We know in the word of wisdom that we have been told to avoid alcohol completely. And thank goodness, because alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen. It disrupts DNA production and repair and contributes to carcinogenic substances being formed. Okay. Also, higher alcohol content can induce oxidative stress and potentially enable other carcinogens to be easily absorbed by the body. It is so important to abstain from alcohol. There is no healthy level of alcohol. There's no amount of alcohol that is good for your body. Period. Zero, none, nothing. Thank goodness we have been suggested to avoid alcohol in the word of wisdom. Just like not smoking, obviously, is another thing. To not smoke will significantly reduce your risk of cancer. So those 2 things play a huge role. Not doing that is so important. But plant-based foods are so protective, and they provide risk reduction in the majority of cancers. Specifically, the whole grains, legumes, non-starchy vegetables, and fruit have been found to have the fiber, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants that have mechanisms to be anti-cancer and nutrient dense while being low calorie to reduce the risk of increased body fatness, which can also increase your risk of cancer. The World Cancer Research Fund has recommended at least 5 servings of vegetables every day, fruits and vegetables. We've heard that 5 a day. We've heard it, but are you doing it? Are you actually doing it? Are you eating the foods that have the anti-angiogenesis effect in your body? Are you making that small and simple change that can minimize your risk of cancer by just adding more fruits and vegetables to your diet day in and day out? And not only that, but fiber is only found in plants, and fiber has a huge role at protecting your gut from getting colon cancer. One of the highest risks of colon cancer is not eating enough fiber. And guess what? 95% of Americans are not eating enough fiber. I met a guy whose family member had passed away from colon cancer. And I asked, did they mention a change in diet by chance? He was like, no. They said there was nothing you could do. It kills me. This is why I'm shouting this from the rooftops. This is why I'm standing on this soapbox, because there is something you can do. When it comes to colon cancer, we need to be eating more fiber. We need to protect our gut, because when we eat fiber, our gut microbiome produces what's called short chain fatty acids. And one of those is called butyrate. And butyrate is going to protect your gut lining. It's going to protect you from colon cancer. You need to be eating more fiber. Plant-based foods, and in specifically soy. I want to talk about soy because soy gets a bad rap, but soybeans contain a phytoestrogen known as isoflavones that can bind to estrogen receptor sites, and plant estrogens do not behave in the same way as human estrogens and are much more selective about where they connect in the cells and have anti-estrogen effects, which is important when it comes to your risk of breast cancer. And a lot of people don't understand how soy can be so beneficial because there wasn't research done on women until like 2009 to even show these benefits. We didn't know, but you didn't even need the research. Just look at Japan. Just look at these Asian countries who've been consuming soy products for hundreds and thousands of years and have the lowest risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. It's ridiculous that we even thought anything otherwise by just looking at these countries that don't have the type of cancers that we have because they are consuming soy. Soy can protect you against cancer. Soy is safe. In fact, we all should be consuming about 2 servings of soy foods every day from things like soy milk or tofu to experience these protective benefits. It can minimize your risk of cancer, especially breast cancer. Now, if I had cancer, the first thing I would do is look at studies, huge studies, big studies that have been done to reverse cancer. Not just my friend of my friend went on keto and they reversed their cancer. No, I want to know of an actual controlled study that was done. And thank goodness we have one. And it is Dr. Ornish's landmark prostate cancer reversal study. He put individuals on a plant-based diet that had a little bit of low-fat dairy. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a complete vegan diet, but he also had them reduce their stress. He also had them walk and exercise and improve their connections and love with other individuals. And they found that in his famous cancer study, Dr. Ornish and his colleagues examined the effects of this low-fat plant-based diet, moderate exercise, and stress management on men with early-stage prostate cancer. And after 1 year, they found that prostate cancer cell growth was inhibited almost 8 times as much in the experimental group compared to the control group. 8 times. 8 times. These results indicate that a low-fat plant-based diet and lifestyle changes may affect the progression of early low-grade prostate cancer. That's huge. That's huge. Now, you don't have to be perfect, but one of the benefits of consuming a predominantly plant-based diet is it is lower in IGF-1. Now, insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1 exposure is a known promoter for tumors. So remember that promotion stage, it's not only initiated, but it's starting to grow. Well, if you're consuming a lot of dairy, then you're consuming a lot of IGF-1. IGF-1 is great. It tells calves to grow really, really fast because that's what cow's milk is made for. It's made to tell a baby calf to grow really fast. But unfortunately, IGF-1 also tells cancer cells to grow really, really fast. And it is specifically linked to increased risk of breast and prostate cancer. So reducing IGF-1 levels is so important, and that comes from reducing your dairy intake. Now, when we're consuming more plant-based foods, we are having reduced levels of bile acids that may contain carcinogens. This can be made by bacteria when they convert bile acids to more secondary bile acids that could contain harmful compounds. They get recycled in the body. Basically, the more you go poop, the more you're letting out toxins. So we want to be going, number two, regularly. And this can be in the form of bile, it can be in excess hormones, and fiber acts like a scrub brush to scrub out our intestines, to let everything out, excess cholesterol, excess hormones, and all of these carcinogens that are just hanging out. And the longer the poop stays, the worse it gets. We want these better quality stools. We want the fiber. And key in all of this is we've heard all about antioxidants. We know that antioxidants fight oxidative stress, and the oxidative stress is key in how cancer grows and how cancer is formed. And so why are we not eating more antioxidants? Why isn't this talked about instead of protein day in and day out? We need to be eating as many antioxidants foods as possible to decrease our cancer risk. And guess what? Those are found in fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and legumes and whole grains. The darker the color, the more antioxidants, it's going to protect your body. We need to be eating more of them. Now, there's one important thing that I really want to address so that you can understand why it is that when we eat meat sparingly, we minimize our risk of cancer. And so if there's one thing besides the anti-angiogenesis effects of eating more plants, when we consume processed meats, it's a group 1 carcinogen, we are exposing ourselves to carcinogenic compounds, carcinogenic substances. Red meat has what's called heme iron, which is known to promote tumor growth. Heme iron is only found in meat, and it has shown potential mechanisms to increase the risk of colorectal cancer by promoting cell DNA damage to genes that inhibit or protect the cell from cancer growth. So it's heme iron. Excess heme iron isn't going to be good for cancer. Something that we don't realize enough is that every time you consume meat, when it has been pan fried or grilled or barbecued or smoked or even just cooked at a high temperature, it produces what's called HCAs, heterocyclic amines, or PAHs, which are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Now, what are these? Again, they're created when meats are pan fried or grilled or smoked, and they are known carcinogens, and they cause DNA to change and increase your cancer risk. The sizzle that we get from cooking meat, you know, that sizzle that sounds so good, that contains PAHs. And when they are removed and returned back to meat in the form of smoke and flame, that further blackens and grills the meat. PAHs are also found in smoked foods, cigarette smoke, and car exhaust fumes. And there is a dose-response relationship to the amount of HCAs and PAHs formed, that the longer the meats are cooked, the higher the concentration of HCAs and PAHs. Now, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, and the World Health Organization has confirmed that red meat is a probable carcinogen. And then when you, on top of that, grill it, pan fry it, then you're adding even more carcinogens. And then on top of that, if you turn it into a hot dog or a lunch meat, because then you're adding more smoke, you're smoking it longer, you're adding more, it's like a double whammy from meat itself if it's more processed. We are exposing ourselves to this day in and day out, increasing your risk of cancer. And your body can only fight off so many carcinogens. It's like playing ping pong all day long. It's like, okay, here's breakfast. Whew. All right, let's fight it off. Here's lunch. Here's dinner. And it's going to catch up to you at some point. And currently, there are extensive studies to further investigate this relationship between meat intake, cooking methods, and cancer risk. But the general recommendation is to limit eating processed meats as much as possible. We all know that, but are we doing it? Here are some best practices to minimize your exposure of these harmful substances. Number one, if you really must eat your meat, it's best to pre-cook meat in the microwave to reduce the time it is in contact with these high heat temperatures. Number two, keep turning the meat when you are cooking it. So turn it over and over so it's limiting the amount of time it's over the open flame. You can remove black or charred portions of the meat before you're eating it, and avoid consuming meat drippings for gravy But one of the coolest things is that you can actually marinate meat in spices because plants are rich in antioxidants and they have this antioxidant effect so that it actually prevents as much carcinogenic compounds from forming in the first place, because that is how powerful plants are. Now, a lot of people ask, when you grill vegetables, does that also produce HCAs and PAHs too? And the answer is no. HCAs are the result of a specific recipe of amino acids and creatine, a combination that you don't find in vegetables. And PAHs are the result from fat drippings, which are also not formed on veggies. However, they can form other carcinogens. And so it's not like it's amazing for you. There are certain things that are found on grilled vegetables that may even be similar to things like in cigarette smoke. But overall, charred marks on vegetables are not as carcinogenic as charred marks on meat. Not even close, actually. It's like 1/10 of the amount. Reducing meat to on occasion or sparingly is the best practice if you are concerned about the susceptibility of bowel cancer or any other type of digestive cancer, stomach cancer, but mostly bowel cancer. It's been shown that the risk of bowel cancer increases by 17% with every 3.5 ounces of red meat consumed per day. When it comes to choosing what type of diet to follow, of course, you need to balance the pros and cons. I know it can be so overwhelming when you're trying to feed your kids plants and they don't like tomatoes and they don't like cucumbers. And it's like, oh, I just want to make dinner. I get it. It's so frustrating. It's so overwhelming. In fact, when I had my 4 kids before my twins were born, I remember cooking my kids mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and thinking, I thought I'd be a healthier mom than this. I didn't think that I would be resorting to these methods, but when you're going through it, you just have to survive. You're just in survival mode. And I understand. But when you have a chance, if you can, the more plant foods you're consuming and the less animal foods, you can turn cancer on and off. You really can. The power is within you. Why wait until cancer is found in your body? Why wait until it's too late? Let's all try to consume more plants. Let's all live the blessings that are outlined in the Word of Wisdom when we're not only avoiding cigarettes and avoiding alcohol, but also it says in there to eat meat sparingly for a reason, and that the destroying angel will pass by us. And right after heart disease, the second cause of death in America is cancer. And there's a reason why eating more plant foods and eating less meat will minimize your risk. So the takeaways for today is that cancer is super complicated. Different types of cancer have different types of causes and different ways of addressing it. They're all unique diseases. You can't put one cancer in all of the categories. It's super complicated. So don't fall for simplified treatments and cures because treatment requires multiple modalities. Do your research, collaborate with your healthcare professionals. But why not change your diet? Why not eat more plants? Why not eat less meat? When you focus on a variety of plants and multiple servings, you can combat a lot of the factors that impact cancer, from body fatness to just adding more fiber to adding more antioxidants and to reducing your exposure to toxins. You have more influence on the development of cancer than you think, and it is never too late. Any changes you make today will pay dividends. When you focus on plants in your diet, you pretty much also address the risk factors and other chronic diseases, not just cancer. Now, I know it can be hard and it can be overwhelming. And when we went plant-based, it was overwhelming for us. And that's why I have set up a membership to help people transition to eating more plants. That's why I have a YouTube channel, because if you can't afford to join my membership, that's fine. Then watch my YouTube channel. Get some delicious recipes that make this doable, that makes recipes where your whole family can enjoy and they won't even notice that there isn't any animal products in it. I want to be the support for you when you need it. So please give it a fair shot. If you've tried plant-based eating before and it didn't work, try again. It really can make a huge difference. And if you felt like you had tons of gas and bloating from all of the fiber, go a little bit slower this time. Maybe just switch out a meal or 2 a week. You don't have to go all in at once, but any progress is progress and you will reap the benefits later on. All right, I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Ali Essig. And if you need more help and support with transitioning into eating more plants so you can lose weight and feel better, improve your gut health, and just reduce your risk of chronic disease, then make sure to check out my PlantWise membership. That's PlantWhys, because I like to teach the why behind eating more plants. But if all you need is just a couple more delicious recipes that feed your family and everyone loves, and not to mention super simple and easy, then make sure to check out my YouTube channel, which is also PlantWise, PlantWhys. Hope to see you there.